All right, ladies and gents, this week we're talking about my hospitalization from hell. Truly was an experience written by Satan. I feel like I lived in Dante's 7th layer of Inferno. It was a brutal time. And if you followed me on Instagram or you follow me on TikTok, you know a little bit about it. But this week, you're getting the full scoop. And in order to tell that story, I had to bring the whole support crew with me. We got St. Coop. We got Tederico.
Knox is back there.
Knox is back there somewhere, lounging out because she had to work during that stay. And let me tell you, she was pissed. She was so angry. I'm proud of her for not lashing out. I'm proud of us for not lashing out, honestly.
I wish we had lashed out. In hindsight, God.
I mean, the doctors literally thanked us at the end for being so kind and communicative about this. And I'm like, wait, were we allowed to not be kind? Because I would like to reverse and yell if not.
Power dynamics, all that. We'll talk about it in a minute.
This week's episode, we're going to be catching you guys up. It's been a month since I last sat down and got to chat with you guys one-on-one. And that last time was during my last IVIG infusion. I went 7 weeks this time between infusions, which if you get IVIG is a big no-no. You usually get it every 3 to 5 weeks for most people. Some people even get it every week. So this was a recipe for disaster that had the nice sprinkling of a perfect storm. We had grandparents, too, that were in the ICU at the same time. Emotionally stressful. We had fleas on our dogs in our house. And I have OCD. So that was emotionally stressful.
For everyone.
For everyone. And I also went ham and I bought literally everything. So if you guys ever have fleas in your house, just ask me what you should buy. I now know the right things and the wrong things. There's also a crazy weather storm, temperature dropping, stuff like that. And I'd been living in my year of yes. Really forcing the yo-yo. I'd just gotten back from skiing, so like my body was at its limits and everything came crashing down and culminated in me needing to be hospitalized. I thought it was going to be smooth sailing because candidly, the last hospitalization ended with me finally being like, oh my gosh, a provider is listening to me and wants to take care of me. Like, I'm going to start believing in the bet and like, I'm going to start believing the best, believing the better.
Seeing
the best
side of things,
assuming the best
yeah.
in more hospital interactions and with providers. This interaction erased all of that hard work, you motherfuckers. So anyway, I have taken a couple days. I've been chewing on what happened so I can like accurately depict what factually happened and also share some takeaways that I've now walked away from this experience with. But before we get into that, quick housekeeping. Welcome back to Calling in Sick. I forgot to say that at the top, so there it is. This week, I would love for you to like, follow, and subscribe. If you can send this one to a friend who's going through IVIG or is autoimmune or has a chronic illness, I think this is the episode where they will feel very seen and heard. Because when I was in the hospital, sharing what was going on live, I had 500 DMs from people saying they had had similar experiences, which is appalling. Because that means 500 different providers treated 500 different patients to this degree of inhumane treatment. So send this to your friend if they're sick because they probably have experienced this. And thank you. You know I've got some Alex's picks for you guys. My first pick is the Tower 28 spray. I love that stuff because it has like antimicrobial properties to it. And in the hospital, there's lots of microbes. So I was spraying that shit on my face, spraying it after anybody walked in my room, spraying it everywhere, on my bedding, on the remote, everything.
If only we'd had pepper spray, too.
Ooh, that would have been good. I would have pepper sprayed that guy because I felt like he was emotionally and also physically harming me.
Yeah.
He actually did physically harm me. I mean... He did.
Indirectly.
Yeah. If you would like a link or a discount code, look below. My second pick of the week is another Tower 28 product. This is their lip treatment. You guys know I'm usually a tilt lip treatment girly, but I also really like this one. It's more of a gloss, and it gives a little poutiness to the lips. So we love this. Cooper doesn't love kissing you with that one because it is a little stingy.
That's the spicy.
Spice. It's actually not spicy at all. I just like to joke. I just like to pretend that some are spicy so he won't steal the ones that I love the most. I guess you have to find out. Okay, so on that note, let's dive into the story that Satan wrote.
I'll be right back for the part where I come in.
because I told Cooper I was a big girl and could do this hospitalization all by myself.
Doing baby prep and all that.
And I have realized that was the wrong decision.
It's going good.
We're so ready to have a baby.
Speaking of Alex knocking things over, funny story. Yesterday, she knocked over 3 drinks.
Completely over too. Like 100% zero recovery of said beverage.
She wakes up, deliver her coffee in bed. Oh no, it was water. Water, yeah. Coffee was the day before.
Yeah.
Day before was a full cup of coffee in bed. The next day was your entire water bottle all over your bedside table and books and stuff.
Mm-hmm. And last night was my mocktail all over my computer and my tax documents.
Yeah, which she was very nonchalant about.
I was on the phone.
She was on the phone.
When I get flary, I just get really shaky and my proprioception gets off. And we're obviously sitting in that right now.
Yeah. But anyways, I'll be right back.
So the morning I went to the ER, I told Cooper I wanted to do it by myself again. It went successfully last time. It probably would go successfully this time. And I just wanted to double down on this momentum. I had talked to my provider the night before, shared that I was at a 10 out of 10 pain. I felt like I could maybe patch myself together overnight so I wouldn't have to just sit in a waiting room at the ER for God knows how long, how many hours. And she said, that sounds great. We'll get you admitted, we'll get your symptoms taken care of, and we'll get you IVIG again. When I got to the ER, I was happily surprised to see that there was no one sitting in the ER. Literally empty. So I check in, and within 2 minutes, I get walked back into a room. The nurse that comes in, great guy. He's sitting down, putting an IV in my arm, asking me about my disease, gets tears in his eyes, saying, you're way too young to have dealt with all this stuff. I'm so sorry, and I'm so sorry that you've probably been failed by people in my profession. I want you to know I have your back. I've got you. I'm going to advocate for you, and we're going to try to get you feeling better. And this guy didn't have to say that, but him saying that made me feel so safe in the emergency room that I then thought stupidly that the entire hospitalization would be like that. The ER doc comes in. He's never seen a case of PIN before, asks me some questions, wants to see my feet and my legs. I'm like, I charge on that. Just kidding. That's a terrible joke. I don't charge for my feet pics. I think tons of dermatologists and rheumatologists have access to those bad boys. He talks, he gets the pain management started, and for the first 2.5 hours, I'm well taken care of. And that's because I'm still under ER care. What I don't realize at that time, the specialist team that was admitting me had admitted me. And so now the ER doctors could not take care of me. Any order would have to come through the specialist team. They did not come and round on me for another 3-4 hours. So I just sat in the ER in my bed, writhing in pain with an ER team that could not help me. They were frustrated. I was frustrated. Finally, the team that was admitting me comes down. And for those that don't know, ER team works in the ER. Your specialist teams work in clinic and also round in the hospital. So when you're getting admitted, that team that works in the hospital comes and sees you in your ER bed, usually, or a resident does, before they actually bring you upstairs. They go over your pharmacy needs. You go over what's in your bag to make sure that everything is accounted for. If anything gets stolen, it's accounted for, et cetera, et cetera. It's like a lot of liability stuff for the hospital. We're chatting. They say, how are you feeling? And I said, terrible. My pain has skyrocketed in the last couple of hours. At this point, I'm Sephirin. The attending of this team, the big dog, he looks at me and says, well, what do they usually do for this for you? And at this point I said, there's actually a protocol in my file that breaks it all down. But the TLDR is we have a plan to break my pain when I come in here with CRPS, PAN, small fiber neuropathy flare-ups. I go over the plan. It includes IV narcotics, and if those don't work, then I do a ketamine infusion to see if that will break the CRPS pain. When I said those words, it was like light bulb went off in this guy's head. And immediately the lens of she is drug seeking enters his brain because he scoffs at me and said, we don't do those. We don't administer any of those drugs. And I said, confused, because at this time I still did not know I had been admitted already. I'm kind of confused. I've come into the ER several times and that's what they've always administered. So I don't see why it would be any different this time. And he said, well, I don't write those things and you've been admitted. I'm slowly clicking what's going on. But mind you, I'm in a ton of pain, my brain fog, out the wazoo, and I'm by myself. And he starts giving me this vibe like, I might be fucked. So I'm texting Cooper, hey, I'm about to get admitted, but I don't know how good this is going to go. So Cooper starts driving back to the hospital. He scoffs and he rolls his eyes at me. And then he says, well, what have you been given while you've been here? And I said, literally nothing. I've been here for hours. I tell him also, I think I'm at this point because I haven't had any meds all day. I've missed my at-home pain meds, my mental health meds, like anxiety and depression meds, my oral chemo, my lupus medication, Tylenol. I'm behind on everything. And I think that's also why I'm in so much pain. And he's like, oh, well, of course. Well, we'll get you back on those. Then he leaves and his resident sits with me and we go through every single medication I take. I have this resident repeat back to me what she had heard me say to ensure that my IVIG pre-meds were entered into the system correctly. I've learned this lesson one too many times. Somehow the ball gets dropped in between that conversation and the pre-meds getting administered, and I wanted to avoid that. So 3 times went over this med list. Finally, I get upstairs into my bed, meet my nurse team. Phenomenal team. My nurse admits to me that she also has a chronic illness, so she's going to be my advocate. She gets it, and she's here for me. We open up the pre-med list. Let's say it as a class. It was wrong. So frustrating. So we spend 2 hours trying to get the pre-med list correct. Delay starting the IVIG until about 10 p.m. And I'm still late on all these meds. Now it's been 12 hours. Nothing to help me. In a flare-up where I had called my doctor the night before saying I'm at a 10 out of 10 pain and I think I need to go to the emergency room. Horrendous. We call the nighttime on-call doctor. They drop by. They are acting the same way as the attending, saying that if you take Benadryl and an IV narcotic, you'll probably overdose, which is not how that works. And she was very, very worried about it. And I said, I've been hospitalized many times. You can look through those charts and see what the dosing was like. And if you're comfortable with that, I know that's what will give me relief right now since I've been 10 hours with no help. Finally, my nurse and the charge nurse talked to her enough times and convince her that that's probably a good plan. Get my meds, start the IVIG infusion. I'm exhausted at this point and I zonk out. Then the rest of the night is relatively smooth sailing, except for I'm so tired because of being in this much pain for so long and not being helped. I don't wake up halfway through the infusion where I usually get another dose of IV Benadryl, which ultimately for me helps me not get those crazy gnarly side effects that we all get of like nausea and headache or aseptic meningitis. I sleep through it and I don't wake up until the attending is coming back the next day. Missing that dose that I had gone over 3 times and confirmed with everybody was so frustrating because it put the trajectory of this IVIG administration off on the wrong foot. Before we get into the next day, few clarifying points. 1, I get these medications in IV format when I'm in the hospital because I get gastric inflammation when I'm in a flare-up. I have duodenitis, and so I don't absorb oral medication in the normal way and normal amount as when I'm not in a flare-up. This is how we kind of bifurcate that. I also get extraordinarily nauseous on the oral chemo I'm on and also from IVIG. So that is the second reason we go that route. These doctors had such an aversion to IV medication that even Zofran, which is a nausea medication, you can get it over the counter in other countries. They had written the lowest dose I have ever seen, which is 4 milligrams every 12 hours. Instead of 4 milligrams every 4 to 6 hours. That's how I knew, like, these people do not trust that I'm reporting my symptoms accurately. They think I'm full of hot air. And what they are now giving me is what they think I should be like, instead of listening or trusting the patient at all. And that is a very scary realization when you are in a hospital at the mercy of the team that is helping you. Pause. I had to come back on. I just finished listening to this week's episode and I realized I shared all about how for IVIG, I need this very specific protocol to make sure that I don't have any allergic reactions. What I did not share was how we figured out why that happens. And it's such a pro tip. It's getting your gene sequence. And I know I've talked about this brand before in the past, like maybe a year ago when I actually went through and did it. And when I went to go on their website to see if they were running any sales, stumbled across the biggest sale ever. It's Rare Disease Month and they're running 60% off their packages. So I obviously had to pop back on here and fill you guys in on everything because I also have a stackable code. Because with every infusion I seem to have an allergic reaction or I burn through medications really quickly and then they stop having any kind of efficacy, I've always thought my body was just weird and quirky. Turns out I actually have this gene called the MTHR gene, and that makes how I process certain medications very different from other people. And honestly, when I did my genetic sequencing with sequencing, got the results and shared it with my doctors, my whole team light bulb moments went off because we finally had a why this was happening to my body. I mean, I'm little. Why do I need 100 milligrams of IV Benadryl just to get through an infusion of IVIG? So when I went through to get my genes mapped out, I chose sequencing because of the way they approach it. It's a one-time test, but as new medical research comes out and you want to have your genes then tested for that research, it's a part of their subscription model. It's already baked into how it runs. So for instance, there's new medical criteria on the genetic front about Ehlers-Danlos and all those kind of connective tissue diseases. Sequencing, well, the sequencing platform can now tell you, even if you did your test a year ago, if you have any of the markers for those diseases. It's amazing. Continuously finding new things. So if you've been hitting a wall on the Western medicine front because all of your labs are coming back, let me guess, normal, maybe think about getting your genes tested. And with the sale that they're running right now and my code, CIS20 will give you 20% stackable, you can get almost 80% off of these tests, $300 to $500, not the usual sticker price of genetic testing of $2,000. So if you've ever wanted to do it, this is the month to do it. And what a better way to treat yourself during Rare Disease Month. So go to sequencing.com today, shop the sale, and add my code. And I hope that you get some new answers that maybe you haven't found before. I wish so bad that I had called a patient advocate line at that point, asked for an ethics consult, really asked for any kind of help, maybe even fired the provider at this point. But things hadn't escalated to the degree that they had yet. But the warning signs were definitely there that this was not going to be going in the right direction. What I did do, though, was I sent a portal message to my specialist and let her know that my pain was not under control and I felt like the team rounding on me was not willing to help me on that front. She called me on her personal cell phone late at night, said she was so sorry that was happening, that she knows that that happens to people that look like me. Invisible illness, look totally fine, but have debilitating pain. And she was really sorry that that was going on, that she was going to call the people rounding on me and try to get that to budge the next day so I'd have a better experience. I was so hopeful based off of that call. But the next morning when I woke up and the attending came back with his residence team, the first thing he said to me was, well, you've gotten your first dose of IVIG, so you should be feeling better now. And I kind of chuckled and said, I think we both know it doesn't work that fast. I wish, but it doesn't. And he said, well, you told your nurse this morning that you're seeing some improvement, which was true. I was having such bad muscle weakness the night before when I was getting admitted. I could hardly walk. I needed assistance getting to the bathroom. That morning when I woke up, it was still pretty lopsided and a limp was going on, but I could get myself to the bathroom by myself. And that is an improvement. Didn't mention that the pain had changed at all because it hadn't. I get worse before I get better with IVIG. And because I had missed that halfway through Benadryl dose, I was still in so much pain, if not more pain, because now I was dealing with my pain I was in before I was even admitted and the IVIG hangover, which feels like the flu, body aches, headache, nausea. It's like the worst hangover you've ever had, plus the full body flu. So when he said I should be better by now, and laughed, I thought he was kidding. Because what a ridiculous statement to say, especially for someone who, with his specialty, prescribes that medication all the time. He wasn't kidding. That's something he genuinely believed, and that was frightening to me. That probably should have been the second red flag that this guy was not going to be a good caregiver for this hospital stay. His response to me saying, no, it doesn't work that fast, I wish, I'm still in a lot of pain, was, well, it's a new day, it's a new 24 hours, you now have your home meds in your system, so let's just wait and see what happens. And I said, respectfully, I really just don't want to do that anymore. I've been waiting and waiting and waiting to get any kind of pain relief, and I am in so much pain. I need help. I need you to help me. And he says, no, I'm not comfortable writing any kind of pain control for you. You are already on at-home meds. You have chronic pain. My job is not to control your chronic pain, which was infuriating because, yes, I do have chronic pain. But when I'm in a flare-up because of my autoimmune diseases, one of the symptoms I have of my autoimmune flaring up is pain. Chronic pain plus acute pain. How he couldn't see that those were two different things was beyond me. I'm like, yeah, we've got my chronic pain, my base pain covered, but that's not what I'm complaining to you about. And honestly, being a patient in pain, having to try to explain that chronic illness and chronic pain patients still deserve care and treatment when they're in acute periods is so difficult to do because nothing is working in your brain because you are so exhausted from how much pain you're in. It's wild. Of course, I made sure my nurses were in the room with me so that they could hear him talking to me. And he was being incredibly rude to the point where at the end of his rounding time, my nurse with tears in her eyes said, we need to get palliative care in here or something. She needs help. And if you're not comfortable, why don't we get another team in here who knows a lot about this stuff and would be comfortable? He said, I will get palliative care to come around. A couple hours later, he comes back. I've talked to palliative care. As he's walking out the door, I say, please just look over my chart. You'll see that when I'm admitted for flare-ups, pain is a big symptom of mine, and I've never had it ignored like this before. And as he's walking out the door, he goes, well, there's an oral medication you can take. Just put it in the system. And he walks out the door, and I'm sitting there frustrated. Then I hear him outside of my door talking to the nurse saying, look, I put an oral med in there for her to take. She's refusing to take it. She just wants IV medication. She's drug seeking. I've never heard a provider talk about me like that before. And you bet your ass, I sat up, shuffled my little body to the door, opened the door and said, excuse you? I can hear you outside of my door. I'm not drug seeking. I have been hospitalized enough times that I know this game. You're saying you're going to bring me a team that understands pain that's going to be able to help me. Well, if they're able to get here in the next 5-10 minutes, if I take the pain medication you're offering me, I won't be able to get any more pain relief or start the protocol that they want me to start for another 6 hours. I have suffered enough at this point. I'm putting my foot down. I'm exhausted. Please just help me and stop assuming these things. He said, then take it. I want to see you take that pain medication. I'm calling Cooper at this point going, fuck, this guy is like out to get me. He's seeing everything I'm doing as being sneaky. He thinks that I'm drug seeking. How do I handle the situation? And Coop's like, it's going to be okay. Let's give him a chance to get palliative care in here. Your nurses are hard at work on this, and we'll see how it goes. A couple hours pass. I keep saying I'm in pain to my nurses. They're paging the doctor. And he responds, if she's in pain, start her IVIG now. It's been all of 6 hours since my IVIG ended. So this is like I'm getting a full dose in a 24-hour period. Which at the get-go, I told him I was not able to tolerate in my body. He also was acting like IVIG is a pain medication, which it is not. It like inflicts pain before it helps with anything. So we start the IVIG. Finally, I get the pre-meds correct. And during that part, he comes back in with his team and says, I reviewed your files. I've talked to palliative care. I reviewed my plan with the chief medical officer, the CMO, and the head of my department. And they all agree that this is the right course of action. And there's nothing else that we're going to be able to do for pain. And I'm kind of proud of myself, but I looked at him dead in the eyes and I said, I do not trust that you accurately reported my symptoms to the people that you spoke with. All of those people have not talked to me, have not asked questions, evaluated the situation on their own. They're going off of what you're reporting, and how you have treated me thus far makes me believe that you're not reporting the truth of how I'm experiencing pain right now, but how you're perceiving I should be experiencing pain. And he just says, look, this is getting really escalated. We need to bring a third party in here. I'm going to get the chief medical officer, which is like the biggest big dick move you could do. I said, no, I would like a patient advocate to be in here or palliative care. We don't need to bring in the chief medical officer. I'm sure they have more important cases to deal with. This is just so I can get pain under control for a disease that's known to be incredibly painful. He was very flustered, and I continued on and said, you canceled my consult with palliative care, and you took it upon yourself to talk to them and say that that counts. That does not count as a consult. They need to come in and lay eyes on me and talk to me. That's how this works. And I was very adamant about that because when you zoom out, what he was doing was making a snap judgment on me, probably going to all these other providers, pitching what had happened to them from his perspective with his assumptions about me, instead of ever going to anyone that actually takes care of me or is an expert in pain saying she's in pain, this is what we're doing, what else can we do? There was no solution-oriented movement in this man. It was all, I'm right, you're a drug seeker, you're wrong, and I'm going to make you suffer. And it was appalling to me. When he left because things were getting too escalated, my nurse actually broke into tears. And she said, what he is doing to you and how he's treating to you is not okay. It is bothering me and my soul, what is going on. It's bothering my charge nurse, and we are trying to get internal medicine to pick you up and to get him away from you. The charge nurse comes in. I'm crying, sobbing. They give me a hug because they're so disgusted by this. And they said, look, there's some politics that's going on here. We're trying our best. We can't promise anything, but we are trying our best to help this. This is a really icky situation that's going on. And when they said that, I was so sad and disappointed because I realized I probably wasn't going to get helped. There was stuff going on behind the scenes that meant this attending had some power, and that power dynamic was only going to be exacerbated the more I pushed and advocated for myself. So I called Cooper and I said, I needed to get back here. This is going downhill fast. This is what's happened so far. And I need your help because I do think having you in the room will change how he's talking to me at least. And that's what takes us to when Cooper arrived. Cooper arrives about 20 minutes before these guys come to round on me again. He brings Teddy and Knox. Thank God. We've got backup. All four of us. We are squad deep. And the second they walk in this room, Cooper and I realize that this is not going to be a let's find a solution thing. This is them trying to smooth out the fact that this guy was being so rude to me earlier. One of my biggest pet peeves when people talk is when they do the triangle thing with their hands. It just eeks of high ego and superiority, and it really bothers me. And both of them, hands in the triangle.
And not to mention that the triangle was paired with the most condescending,
media trained,
media tone and content of what they were saying. It was fucking infuriating.
Yeah, so it really was. I mean, it was insane.
But anyways.
So they walk in.
It's his boss, not a patient advocate, not a third party.
Which obviously is not going to be an unbiased person to help protect me, the patient. It was very clear that this was protect the hospital and the hospital's image, because I think it became abundantly clear that this doctor had been speaking to me rudely, treating me very, very negligently. And I know that the nurses, the head charge nurse of my floor had been sending in stuff. I had been asking for a patient advocate, for an ethics consult, all of those things. So this was very cover your ass CYA to us. Yep. And when the head of the department starts talking, he's saying that he's there to moderate and mediate the conversation, which is not what the goal was. As you guys recall, I had asked the attending for a third party. Palliative care, any of my actual specialists, internal medicine, a patient advocate, somebody that could have my best interests in a differentiated opinion separate from him. My heart fell out of my body when I saw it was his boss. So they come in, they start talking. Everything that Cooper asks is met with, I think that's a great question. And it's a great question because XYZ. Like, okay, did you just have a practice session about how to talk to somebody? But anytime I asked a question, I was either ignored, they just moved right on through and kept talking, or they would turn to answer the question to Cooper, not to me.
It was super misogynistic and, again, belittling. They also, didn't answer any of our questions. I think it's
very roundabout question answering.
A couple really clear, really actionable questions before this conversation. We wanted to understand why they aren't following a successful blueprint that you had followed inpatient when you had to get IVIG last time.
Just 7 weeks ago.
That had a super successful outcome, went really well. Why can't we just follow that same protocol? We wanted to understand why he was differing from, you have a document in your file that is created by the
my
leads
doctors
of your care, why they aren't following that. And a couple other really just clear questions. Oh,
yes,
here's
no.
why we're not following the plan. Here's where we disagree with it. But it was a bunch of bullshit responses where the head of the department, which creates a weird power imbalance in my mind. Like,
it was so uncomfortable and not patient forward.
Well, because he was here shutting down everything we asked for and were there to, like, advocate for. We're saying, you're in pain. The day before had been totally fucked by them. They're not following a successful protocol, and they're not giving good justification other than this one huge point of, we just have a difference of opinion. And it's like, this isn't a fucking difference of opinion. Like, I am telling you, this is not working.
And
I'm sorry, go on.
Cooper's heated up. Cooper's fired up. And it's interesting to me that they kept saying we're having a difference of opinion, because I think medical providers should always have their own opinion on something. What medical providers can't have their own opinion on is how someone's experiencing pain. Pain is pain, and if I'm telling you I'm in pain, you're not allowed to have the opinion, I don't believe that you're in pain. That is not practicing medicine, especially because this is the next thing that they said. They apparently had poured all of these resources, many team members themselves, in hours in that day, reviewing my medical files and my chart. I had asked them to do that so that they would see every single hospitalization I've had to date. I've always had pain management covered. It's never been an issue before like this. Instead, he went through my chart to decide that he didn't agree with any of it. But the takeaway from what he was saying in that moment was that they had wasted time and wasted resources trying to take care of me, which I had some cognitive dissonance there, because one, I totally understand there's patients in critical care in hospitals, and I'm just saying I'm in pain. That doesn't mean I don't deserve care, and belittling someone's symptoms by saying, well, it could be worse. Not good medicine, not good bedside manner. That's fucked up. Second, they poured over my file and still walked away stubbornly, believing that they were in the right. That to me shows that they weren't solution oriented. They were just trying to find backup for whatever they were putting forward.
Also, it feels like a pretty bare minimum concept to review someone's file when you're treating them, especially when you're coming in for the same thing that you just came in for. Like, oh, you have no idea. We just spent hours reviewing your file.
It's like, well, that wasn't even necessary, actually.
Sorry, you had to do a little prep to do your fucking job.
And what is interesting, too, out of all of that, is that during that time, they didn't call any of my providers, which would have been the right and easiest and quickest solution, in my opinion. But two, at the end of this session with them, they started just ping-ponging off each other, basically celebrating how good their team is. And the head of the department told me, we are working tirelessly on a cure for you. And when he said that, I burst into tears, because it became abundantly clear that they didn't pour hours over my medical chart. Because if they had, they would have seen that I have a disease called Polyarteritis Nodosa, which is a horrendously painful disease. There are no active cures in the pipeline for that. That's not just bad bedside manner to promise a cure to a patient, but that feels wrong on all sorts of fronts. You cannot promise a cure to a patient.
It was so inappropriate, because he doesn't just like bring this up in line with the conversation. At the time, you're making a super specific request. You're saying, hey, I'm going to be inpatient for another 24 hours. My pain's not been covered.
I've already been suffering. I can't handle more. I cannot tolerate this anymore.
And you're like, how can we...
And I'm crying.
And you're like, how can we follow this protocol from last time where I can get better coverage of my pain until I leave the hospital, and then I'll deal with this with my pain management doctor.
Or just any solution at all.
And the head of the department would be like, well, can we just wait a second? Because I want you to understand that
I personally vetted
Mr. Doctor here, I hired myself, and
I would trust him to take care of anyone in my family.
And right now, after he spent all day helping you, you know what he's going to do? He's going to go home and work on a research paper, and that is going to cure you someday. And it's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
It was out of left field and so unrelated to the problem at hand. Like, I would love to hear that in an appointment. I also know that the team that they're on has nothing to do with vasculitis, and they aren't working on a cure for something that has made my life really, really difficult. Maybe they're working on a cure for small fiber neuropathy, but that is something I developed because of my vasculitis, just like CRPS. And I think all of these kind of comments that they were making, their understanding of my disease was that I had, in quotes, just small fiber neuropathy, which in and of itself is a very painful disease. But in relation to PAN and CRPS, it's like, this is a very complex patient with intense medically proven pain. It's something that's very well researched, that these are some of the most painful diseases in the world. And they wanted to just talk about something they wanted to talk pie in the sky instead of finding solutions in the moment. The other thing I want to scroll back to is when he said that he personally vetted and hired his whole team and would trust any of them to care for his family. As you guys know, my dad's a doctor. When I was growing up, I had a ton of medical privilege. Not just because my dad is a doctor, but because of our social economic standpoint. Whenever I was in the hospital getting care, I received the best care because no provider wants to fuck up or make a patient be in pain when they are their coworker's child. That argument doesn't work for me because, yes, your team is going to take probably even better care of their boss's kid or their boss's family. That's just obvious bias. But all of that is far and beyond the point, because I think the worst thing that they said was that hospitals do not have the infrastructure to help chronic illness patients ever, and that the goal cannot be for me to have zero pain when I walk out the door because surgeons send patients home out of 10 pain all the time. And there's lots of different things that are wrong with those statements. First off, chronic illness patients have acute periods. We all know that. And if these were hospitalists or internal medicine doctors that maybe didn't know as much about PAN, I would expect a comment like that, to be completely honest. These two actively treat and are specialists in a specific autoimmune disease. I was appalled to hear that because their whole job is taking care of people like me. And if they think that that none of their patients ever have periods that require a hospitalization, how are their patients getting proper care when they're having acute periods? That's terrifying. Like, honestly, I feel terrible for anyone that's this guy's patient. And the second thing was that my goal from the beginning of this day was never to have zero pain. I just was at a 10, my day-to-day with my at-home pain meds, I can get to a 3 or a 4. I just wanted to get to like a 6 or a 7 so I could talk to my pain management doctor when I got home, make different plans, but I knew I wasn't going to break pain in the hospital. But I didn't want to be at a 9 or a 10 where I'd been crying for literally over 24 hours. I was in so much pain and my vitals were through the roof. But the comment that they made about surgeons sending their patients home out of 10 pain all the time is inaccurate. And when I told that to my dad, his ears were so red. He was so mad. Surgeons spend a lot of time making sure that what they did is going to have a successful recovery, because that successful recovery outcome impacts their job. If you send a patient home at a 10 out of 10 pain and no pain plan, they're going to have an unsuccessful recovery. There's tons of research that is out that says undermedicated or untreated pain leads to longer recovery periods or no recovery. Surgeons make sure that patients are not sent home at a 10 out of 10. They're sent home stable enough with an at-home plan that can be modified as needed. So all in, these perspectives that they were sharing are some of, I think, chronic illness patients' worst nightmares, because every single point that they said is something that is broken about the system. And maybe it's true in their experience, but they're a part of the problem then, instead of working tirelessly to fix that problem.
Since I only have a minute left here, I think I could talk about how frustrating this was from my perspective, just trying to like advocate for you and like get a better outcome for hours, because it was fucked through and through. This doctor was more focused on trying to be right than to help you.
Yeah.
He was ignoring evidence that was right in front of him from you, from successful IVIG admissions to the hospital in the past. He was ignoring it in favor of his own bias and perspectives, and it was resulting in you having like a physically worse outcome completely across the board. Then he brings in his boss, a biased person who is condescending, also misogynistic, just talking down to us, ignoring everything we're saying, trying to save face in like a PR stunt rather than help a patient. And just like you said, I think they are awful for anyone who's like you. They are probably hurting a lot of patients. And from a perspective of a caregiver, it was really sad to see, because at a certain point, after talking this in circles for 45 minutes, we came to a point of realization where it's like, we're not going to get
any help
here. You're not going to get good care. Like,
the best,
you are going to get worse. And
the longer I stay.
You have someone who actually has a degree of power over your care, the head of this important department, who is obviously biased against you. And we had to come to a point of what is like the best possible outcome that we can get, because it's not getting better. And that was to try to end
the hospitalization
as quickly as possible, because you weren't getting the care that you needed
or deserved.
And like, for that to be the outcome, and for them to be so apathetic, not give a shit, and just be okay with a terrible outcome because of their weird, vindictive, small dick energy.
Okay, this is going to be on YouTube.
Was so disappointing.
You know what we forgot to even touch on? The protocol. Even after I mentioned I have a protocol, the head of the department goes, you know what? I have a great idea. You need to get your team to make a protocol and put it in your file, which I said, it's actually there. And I told your attending that it was there the first second I met him. And his response wasn't, let's go try to find it. Let's make this better. It was, well, where is it? In a very condescending tone, to which I said, I'm a patient. I don't have access to your CRM. I don't know where it would be stored. And he said, well, then you need to have it printed out. And actually, your husband is the one that's going to need to carry it, because providers are going to be looking to him for that kind of information, which is a nice little 1-2 punch of like, I'm not listening to what you're saying. And also, I think your husband's going to report better on how you're feeling than yourself. This continued to the point where he said, my specialists, my pain management doctor, my rheumatologist, everyone else needed to make a new plan, submit that plan to this team of 10, of which one of them takes care of me, and all 10 of them would sit down, discuss, and then decide if they agreed on the plan. 9 providers that don't know me, have never sat down and looked through my history or talked to me, and 2 of which have already shown that they have bias against me. In what world would I have providers that do not take care of me sign off on a plan that my specialist, my very carefully put together team of specialists, because I have a disease that 1 in like 1 or 3 million people have? It was mind-bogglingly frustrating. And he continued to hammer down, why didn't your pain management doctor admit you? Because I'm not here for pain, I'm here for my disease, which is active. Well, why didn't your so-and-so come and see you? Because your team is the one that's attending on me, and I've asked for you guys to call and consult them, but you haven't. It was, I don't know if the head of the department at any point realized that his attending had dropped the ball and they were just trying to cover, and that's why they brought up this whole we're going to try to cure you thing. But my jaw was hanging open the entire time. I was flabbergasted by this experience. The condescension, the misogyny, the lack of empathy, and then the all-around just complimenting of one another and ignoring the patient.
Insane. I do have to go.
I love you.
This is
important.
Infuriating. If people ever want to talk about this, I even want to talk about this because I'm still so mad about these guys.
Love you.
Advocate for yourselves.
As you can tell, we're both still very fired up about the situation. It was heartbreaking to see 2 providers so staunchly focused on being right about an assumption about me instead of being focused on trying to help me. There was no clear communication. There was nothing like, I can't help you, so I'm actually going to step away and get someone else to step in. Nothing I tried, like getting internal medicine, getting a patient advocate, an ethics consult, ever went through. It was me and Cooper and our nurses against these two providers, and that's a terrible situation to find yourself in. I'm glad Cooper and I have taken a few days to kind of digest and chew on what happened, because we have just been full of rage since being discharged. But now we are at least full of rage and have some takeaways from what happened and some action plans. So let's talk about that. This whole admission for IVIG was a harmful experience, in my opinion. And what it showed me was that there's a very large gap between chronic illness lived experience, chronic illness literature, and the provider viewpoint of those two things. In the final consult with the head of the department and the attending, they kept referring to literature that they had been reading about. And literature is great. I think it's a really good way to get a base foundational understanding, a deep systemic understanding of what's going on in someone's body. But it doesn't equate to someone's lived experience. We all know, living with chronic illnesses, that we can have the exact same disease and a completely different life experience with that disease. We have medications that work differently for our bodies. We have symptoms that look different for each of us. And I would expect two people that are experts in chronic illness care to know that. And the fact that they weren't able to differentiate literature and what should be happening to lived experience reporting is honestly frightening to me. I mean, look at what they thought IVIG would do for me in 24 hours. They thought it was going to be a pain medication, that I would be in relief from it. That's a medication they prescribe commonly in that office. It is terrifying to think that if that's their assumption of how IVIG works, how little protocols for pre-meds or post-infusion care their patients probably receive. And candidly, I think if you haven't sat with someone through an infusion cycle and seen how it impacts somebody, you're not allowed to assume anything about how it goes on. I think that should be a requirement, that if you are administering a drug, that if you're prescribing a drug, you need to go and check in with a patient at least one cycle every single day to understand how this drug actually impacts somebody's quality of life from the administration of that drug. But what I've been wondering about is, why do they have this assumption? My theory, and please feel free to prove me wrong here, is that in clinical trials, let's take CAR-T for example, people that are getting CAR-T, one, fit the criteria for this trial to a T. Two, they have failed other medications and are desperate for relief. You only sign up for a clinical trial if you're at the end of the barrel of what's able to help you that's on market. That said, if you're getting that medication and are worried that if you report a bad side effect or that it was really hard, maybe you'll be kicked out of that clinical trial. Patients are less likely to report those kind of symptoms. Or alternatively, if the patient is feeling very ill from the clinical trial, they don't have the energy to sit down and report and write up how they're feeling every single day. And those are honestly just blind spots that happen in clinical trials that we know about. So if you're a doctor and you're solely relying on literature to understand how a drug makes a patient feel, you are doing your patient a disservice. Go on patient forums, talk to your patients, go sit in an infusion room and call your patient the next day. You have to do more, because the lived experience, in my opinion, outweighs the reported literature findings of how someone feels from a medication. And I don't think that should be rocket science or a new thinking at all. That seems like the bare minimum to me. The second thing that I've really been chewing on is the fact that hospital protocols do not match patient realities all that often. And what I mean by that is that there seems to be a gap in understanding by providers that patients with chronic illness or chronic pain or both can have these acute periods that do require and deserve attention. For many of us, pain is a symptom of our disease. When I'm having a PAN flare-up, I'm in pain. I wouldn't go to my pain management doctor to help me with my PAN flare-up because they are not a specialist in that. I would go to my specialist for help with that, and we would consult pain management to help with the symptoms and side effects of the disease or medications that I'm on to help with that flare-up. That's the common sense viewpoint. But in today's world, it seems like hospitals think that if you have a chronic illness or chronic pain or both, you don't have acute periods. And if you do, those can be handled outpatient very easily. They do not deserve the resources of a hospital. And that ultimately is so harmful to a patient because like I said earlier, undertreated and undermanaged pain deters recovery, and it's very, very well researched. So if a provider wants to see their patient get out of that flare-up and do better, why wouldn't we make sure that their flare-up symptoms are being addressed appropriately? And to be absolutely clear, how a patient reports their experience of pain is how the pain is. You don't have an opinion on how they are experiencing their pain. One thing that these providers said in that last sit down was that they thought I had a hypersensitivity to pain due to use of an opioid, a pain medication. And I didn't even argue with them because that could be possible. I also have hypersensitivity to pain because I have CRPS. Kind of hard to know which one is the culprit there. But if I was a betting woman, I would say I lived with CRPS unmedicated before, and I've lived with CRPS medicated. And I would say unmedicated CRPS, way less tolerance to that hypersensitivity. When I am medicated, I can endure that hypersensitivity a little bit better. Regardless, if a patient is in pain with an acute flare-up, now is not the time to fix the long-term goals. Let's do that once we get stable. And had they taken the time to ask me if that was a reasonable goal, or if that was the goal, I would have told them that I've been tapering medication since August of last year in hopes that I can try to get pregnant this summer. And the things that are giving me pause and worry that that date isn't going to be possible anymore is because my IVIG is denied by insurance instead of it being something that is stable. Stable medication regimens, stable disease. Instead, I'm having this yo-yo. So although I was able to successfully taper some of the pain medication in the end of last year, I haven't been able to touch it at all this year, and instead have focused on my anxiety and my depression meds and my gut medications because pain is not under control. It's not stable. And when things aren't stable, that's not when you taper something. So had they sat down and talked to me, they would have known that my goal is to get off of everything by July. That's a really long-winded way to say we shared the same goal. I don't want to be on these medications. In fact, I loved being off of all my medications. I know I'm not going to have a medication-free pregnancy, but I'm going to get as damn close to medication-free as I possibly can. I'm not in the place where I can taper a pain medication because that will do more harm than good. But once IVIG is in my body again, and I'm back to a little bit better of a place, you bet your butt I'm going to be doing that. But they didn't even care. All they cared about was that they had assumed this thing about me, which is every chronic illness and chronic pain girlie's nightmare. But you guys know me. I'm not just a trauma dump and let it stew kind of girl. I'm action oriented. So after letting myself be pissed the last few days, I've been sitting down and asking myself, one, what am I going to do about this? I'm intending on launching the reports to the hospital and to the medical board because it's not acceptable to have any chronic illness patient go through what I had to go through. And I do think that this doctor, maybe both, need to have some training additionally on chronic pain, on acute periods of chronic illness, and what the realities are like of some of the medications that they prescribe. I'm also going to be talking to all my doctors that have this plan and protocol that we've had in place to ask them if they could print it out for me, and that we need to have a plan so that if this happens again, I can call in my team to have my back. I don't want to feel that alone or that scared in a hospital setting ever again. I've had enough medical trauma in my life, and I know how to mitigate it as much as I can, and I admittedly think I did drop the ball a little bit on this one. Because what I didn't do, I didn't call patient advocacy soon enough. I waited until literally hours before I was discharged instead of at the first red flag. I could have called an ethics consult, which I didn't know until after. But that can help when you think the doctor is making unethical decisions based off of bias. Point and blank, this experience. I also could have just fired this doctor. And honestly, I wish I had, because anyone could administer once the IVIG was already running. We had the protocol in my chart. So we just needed to have a team that was actually going to listen to me and help me. I love that St. Coop was able to tap in and help me, but it still breaks my heart that medicine today is still full of providers, unfortunately, that have some misogyny and talk to female patients differently. The tone was more intense, more abrasive when Cooper wasn't there. even when Cooper was there, I wasn't really looked at or addressed. It was Cooper and them having the conversation and me peeping up and them looking irritated whenever I talked. I wish that that didn't have to be the case to have a male with you. But if you are a female with an invisible illness or suffer chronic pain, I think it's kind of necessary at this point in time. And however much I wish hospitals were just a place to go and get better and to heal, when you have a chronic illness or you have chronic pain, you're walking into a location that has more bias against you than people that know about how to treat you properly. And that just means, unfortunately, we have to do the burden of the work, be prepared, have safeguards put in place, and have a plan with our team so that we can try our best to avoid situations like this in the future. And since this is a really dramatic episode, let's talk about my one brain cell pick that is equally as dramatic. You know it. You love it. Say it with me now. Secret Life of Mormon Wives. So good. It's on Hulu. What I love about the show is that it feels actually very unscripted. These girls full out feel their feels, tell it to each other straight, and just the drama ensues. None of them, or very few of them, drink alcohol or do the drugs. So it's just them. And I find that to be even more entertaining. And like, somebody needs to study that versus the other reality TV shows where the people are drinking, because same level of crazy town drama. But the real reason I like this show, one of the girls on the show has a chronic illness. She's not able to get a diagnosis yet. She's been traveling left, right, up and down to get help. Her husband and her go through a really tough period of tension where they're separated even, spoiler alert, because of the impact of her chronic illness on their relationship. And if that isn't relatable, then dang what is, because if you have a chronic illness, you feel like a burden. You are a job for a lot of people in your care circle. But what I love to see was that her friendship with Whitney, which was not good at the start, had its saving moment when Whitney decided to show up for her friend for her medical isms. That was so beautiful to me. I would love if someone from my past, one of my old friends that I'm not friends with anymore because of how they treated me while I've been sick, came out of the woodworks and said, I'm sorry, and I'm here with you now, and wanted to show me that they were there with me now. I would, honestly, forgiveness through and through. Everyone gets a second chance to understand chronic illness better and come back around, in my opinion. I'm so happy that Taylor Frankie Paul is the Bachelorette so I can continue just pelleting my brain with the Secret Life of Mormon Wives lore and lives. I just eat it up. And if you need something to watch, there's 4 seasons. It's on Hulu. Enjoy. And let me know who your favorite person is in the comments. I love Michaela, but I also love Whitney. I know that she was pinned as a villain at first, but I think that she's really cool and I love her and her husband. So that's my favorite on the show. Let me know who your favorite is. And also, but I would be remiss to not mention this, I want to thank all of you for showing up for me during that hospital stay. I said that 500 of you guys DM'd me that you'd had similar stories, but in that same note to me, you also were so kind, offering me words of encouragement, validation, just letting me know that y'all were there with me too. And if I needed anything, that you guys had my back. And that meant the world to me when I felt like the medical system was failing me. So a big thank you. I love you. And I will see you next week for another guest episode. And we will be back on to business. Love you guys. And that's a wrap. Thank you so much for joining me for another week of Calling in Sick. As a reminder, I would love for y'all to like, follow, subscribe, save, share with a friend, do all of the things. It truly helps grow this community, and it helps these episodes reach the people that need them the most, whether that's for an educational piece, to have a little laugh, or to not feel so alone. As a reminder, Calling in Sick sits on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify, and anywhere else where you can find your listens. From the bottom of my heart, I absolutely love you guys. Thank you so much for calling in sick with me every Monday. It's been an honor and a pleasure so far, and I can't wait to continue building this community with y'all. Love you.